Sup dogs, I decided to culminate. Similar, come to a climax. Sup dogs, I decided to put together all of the MDRs into one video, except it is just the development portion of Captive You Are My Idol. Now that it's been out for a month and a half, coming to 2 months, I thought it'd be pretty cool to just have this all together. Now when you're developing your game, you can just take this video, toss it on the side, and watch me develop as you develop your own game. Hopefully you can use it as some sort of inspiration, but moreover to just... Actually, no, just that. Just enjoy in the background. Watch me develop while you develop your own. Now, just a heads up, I have decided to take all of the MDR videos and put them as unlisted. What that means is that you won't find them on my channel anymore. However, you can find them in its full in the playlist down in the descriptions. So if you want to see it in its full for more than just the development portion, if you're interested in anime reviews that I've seen throughout the years and kind of just like life reviews, then go ahead and check out that playlist. But I did want to give you guys some new content, so at the end of this video, you will see the last week or two of my development process and even how the game went as of today, which is October 30th. Now with all that said, I hope you guys enjoy. And one series that I'm currently working on actually has to do with this one. So I hope you're excited to see how I follow up on that. Now, there is a bit of a downside to this, and it's the fact that all these videos, especially if I'm making a game, it takes time to make. It can take up to 2 to 4 months to create a game. But you know how things are with me. I thought Cash's Trap would only take 6 months. But no, I have a stronger restraint on myself this time. Things will go good, I promise. Things will be more consistent. But yeah, I caught COVID, so I was out of commission for a solid 10 days to 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days. And during that time, towards the recovery end, I started working more on that game I mentioned that's going to be turned into MZ3D. And if you made it this far, here is the title. Captive, You Are My Idol. I'm excited to get that game out to you guys. It's going to be very fun. I hope. I pray. And yes, it will be on Steam. More info on that later. Sup dogs, TheOdie here, and welcome to the new series, but only sort of, and not really. I call it my month review, and it takes place at the beginning of every month to talk about what I did in the last month. So let's start by talking about Captive, You Are My Idol. It's a short horror game that I'm currently working on. The game is expected to be about 40 to 90 minutes in gameplay. And it's about you playing as Aylin, an online personality who, you know, is like a YouTuber or a streamer. And, well, they get kidnapped. Cut to the next scene, and you're waking up in your kidnapper's basement. And as it so happens, I'm taking a page out of Misery because he is somewhat of a super fan. Except, he wants you to be his. So the game kind of has two sides to it. One where you're in his basement, and then the other where you're upstairs because he's inviting you to dinner. For you to get to know him a little bit more, and for him to impress you. Yes, how else to impress the person you kidnapped? By cooking them a meal. But it's really while you're upstairs having this meal where everything truly matters. Because anything you say or do can and will be used against you. But jokes aside, you kind of come to the conclusions that you have two options. One, you can examine the room, look at the different items that you have and what you can potentially use for your way to escape. Or two, you can try and charm him. Make him believe that you are actually liking him so that his guard can drop, making your escape all that more easier. But do be wary, because if you're too obvious, he will catch on. And if that happens, then your chance for escape is gone. So this game really emphasizes on the use of MZ3D, and if you haven't seen this video, then please do. That's all the reason why this game's being created. I really wanted to make a game that wasn't just an RPG Maker game using the MZ3D engine, where the whole game is in 3D, because as I said in that video, well, what's the purpose of buying MZ3D in RPG Maker just to make a 3D game? I think you have to use MZ3D in a unique way to really tell your story that also works uniquely for RPG Maker. While you're in the basement, you're in 2D to kind of give you this idea that you're not exactly safe, but you're in a safer position, whereas when you're upstairs in front of your kidnapper, you're in 3D, where things gets taken more seriously, and, well, you best be careful what you do next. I like to think that this swap from 2D to 3D kind of hits that uncanny valley, but not too much to take you out of the element of the game, but enough to kind of give you the sense of horror or seriousness. So yeah, that's pretty much Captive in a nutshell. And I do plan to make it at least a 3 video series, where the first one, I'll do a better job presenting it to everyone. And the second one, it will be very similar to how I made RPG Maker AI, that video. And then in the third one will kind of be like the conclusion overall, my full thoughts on the MZ3D engine now that I experienced it 3 to 4 months put into it. Originally, I was hoping that it would release by around this time, but let's be real, my estimation on dates is just way off. I actually blame this thing. I call it the puzzle cube, and essentially each side of the cube is a different puzzle, and it plays a huge role during a portion of your game where you're trying to solve the cube, yet at the same time, there's a killer roaming, or your kidnappers roaming, looking for you. Haven't finished that completely, but as of all of February, I've just been working on this goddamn cube. It's so funny because some of the puzzles are much harder than some of the others. Like this one, this took me 3 days to figure out. And if you're on my Instagram, I shot a quick story just to be like, I hate you. But then this one took me only an hour to finish, where 50 minutes of that hour was creating the graphics and getting it all imported into RPG Maker and making sure I got the pixels right. So yeah, I think it will be fun and a unique game that's a little bit different than several RPG Maker games that are out there right now. This is just one of 3 major endings. So yeah, you know me. I like my horror games with different endings for some reason, but each ending has its own like universe where it ends in its sort of way, not exactly having a best ending. Those who've played Caster's Trap understands what I mean by that. So the hope here is to have it finished by, at this point, I think the end of April, if I'm trying to be as realistic as possible, just because I do have several trips coming in March and April, so it'll probably delay some of my development because of that. But hey, more on that later. Sup dogs, and welcome to Monthly Developer Review. It's a very chillax series where I get to sit back, talk about all the things I did last month, but with an emphasis on all the things I developed in my latest project. I was about to say Caster's Trap, which by the way, is still relevant. If you haven't tried it, try it out. So with all that said, let's talk about the things I actually did in the month of March. And there is a bit of spoilers here, so if you're not interested in those spoilers, then do skip on ahead, but I'll try my best to not overly spoil them. So of course, all of February was creating this goddamn cube, but all of March was finessing this goddamn cube. So it's a puzzle cube, 6 sides, 6 different puzzles, and while you're trying to solve this puzzle, there's a killer, or there's your kidnapper who's roaming to try and find you and, well, send you back to his basement, essentially. This particular sequence takes place in a section of the game that, who knows where it appears. Anyway, the important thing here was to be able to switch between the different sides and to do it in such a way that it didn't seem too confusing. And I decided to come up with this little map. Originally, I thought about creating it in Effectsier, like an actual 3D cube that'll switch faces, and each side is numbered instead of the layout that you see there. But it was getting late in the day, and I was like, I don't want to go into Effectsier. Late night developer TheOdie is just an 8-year-old throwing tantrums. But that 8-year-old always wins. Though, if I'm to be honest, I think this laid out version is actually much more easier to read and understand than it is with the 3D cube. And then, of course, I also created this info sort of thing. You can actually press the I button to make it appear or disappear. And it gives you a little hint of each puzzle, because after all... Oh no, that's spoilers. I can't say that. Ignore the after all. One of the funnest things about using MZ3D is actually just manipulating the camera angles and getting some very fun stuff. Like, here's one that I actually created like a day or two ago, and I think the scene really speaks for itself, but it's kind of fun. Not really more to say other than that. Just that I think it's cool. Anyway, another thing I had to work on was this. The great outdoors, da 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 da. Yeah, not gonna lie, when it comes to creating outdoor tile sets, it actually terrifies me. Which is weird, because if we just look at this, it's a lot more simpler than the indoor tile sets. But for some reason, it's just like, man, I really don't want to make outdoor tile sets. I think the real fear behind that is the fact that I don't know what to do with grass. Because on one hand, if you're too detailed, then it's gonna look overcluttered, and then on the other hand, if you're not detailed enough, then it's gonna look too plain and, well, generically green. And then there's trees and trying to figure out how to create leaves, and then all the shadowing that's involved with leaves and branches, and then you gotta figure out, well, should I add rocks? Should I add mushrooms? Oh my god! Actually, the one thing that I struggled the most on was creating the house, because I never created a tile set house before. Okay, that's a lie. I did create a tile set house. Which I created for the RPG Maker AI project, Whisper in the Woods. Which also, by the way, is free, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't. But yeah, that was a little bit different, because that's a cabin, and this is an actual house, and I was like, what do I do? So I actually spent some time Googling modern looking houses and then pixel art houses, and I tried fusing it together, and then I had to try and figure out what works for my style, something that's simple and not overly complicated, because I know for a fact that I can't do anything that's overly complicated, but at the same time, if I make it too simple and plain, it's gonna look weird. I like to think I found that balance that actually works out with this map, but hey, you guys do tell me. One of the things that I have started striving for and working towards is a much more simpler art style, and I decided to inspire off of a lot of the old Pokemon games. I find that theirs is very simple, yet at the same time, very nice looking. I like to think that Pokemon hits in a certain way that's just very warming and familiar and very attracting for a lot of cozy gamers, or just gamers in general. One of the things I learned in this indie game development journey is that if I spend too much time in something, especially when I'm only considered as a novice, then it can actually lead to my downfall, just because I only have so much time as a single person, whereas a giant AAA company or even a small company at least have several people so that they can multiply an 8-hour day into 16 hours in one day, and if you have like 5 employees, then 40 hours in one day, for example. So it's really incredible to see what a company can do versus what an individual person can do. And that's one of the things that no one really talks about or acknowledges. Anyway, I digress a bit. I think moving forward, I'm going to stick to the simpler style and really inspire off of Pokemon and really that era. of pixel art. I think it actually is possible for me to finish this by the end of April, but I haven't done much with uploading anything onto Instagram. I haven't created the Steam game page yet, so I'm gonna hold off on the launch and wait until like May, maybe even June, to actually release the game. Just because getting your game out there is actually that important. Anyways, yeah, that's pretty much it for game dev. Now we can talk about other random stuff. Sup dogs, and welcome back to Monthly Developer Review. Did I scare you? I came to the realization that, you know what, I'm a channel trying to make horror games. It only makes sense to make my channel a little bit more spookier too, right? So, expect that from now on. April. What color does April make you think of? I want to say blue. Yeah, probably blue. Blue. April showers bring May flowers. So I guess next month is yellow. Now, as for all the things I've done in April, I actually made some pretty good progress. So there's really 3 paths here. The 2 that I mentioned are just now, but the 3rd path is the odd choice, where you actually allow yourself to fall in love with your kidnapper, aka Stockholm Syndrome. And in this path, well, you can also get to know the dude a little bit more. I say it like he's an okay guy. So throughout the game, he tries to push you his game in hopes that you'll play it and learn about his past a bit. And I had to come up with a way on how I wanted to do this. I knew that in the back of my head that I wanted to make it look a little bit more amateur. Like, on one hand, I thought about just using RTP assets, but nah, overall I decided that it kind of took away from the tone of the serious and darkness that is throughout the game, so I decided to do it a little bit differently. I know this is a little bit of a stereotype of when it comes to psychological horror games, but you are walking down a dark path and all you see is just little graphics of major events that had occurred in his life. And with each event, you learn a little bit more about him. And you know what? I even went as far as to create a mini battle. And who knows? Maybe there's another one. So, if you're pretty much a normal person like everyone else, your first thought is not to fall in love with a dude, but to make your escape. But if you enjoy the game enough to replay some of the parts and actually get to know the guy and go down this 3rd path, well, you get to enjoy the battle. Or battles. I'm trying to sell this to you. Play this 3rd path. But by the way, what do you think about that graphic? Isn't it kind of silly? Silly fun, actually. I kind of enjoy it. Especially the one dude that's like doing that. I think it's like hilarious. I'm actually slowly starting to enjoy pixel art a little bit more now that I know what sort of style that I'm aiming for. It's actually pretty great. I also started working on the Steam game page. Still a little bit of work to do. I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that I do get this up in time when this video releases. And if that's true, then you probably see it down here. But if you don't see anything here, then man, I guess you're just gonna have to wait a little longer. But to go alongside that, I am also creating a teaser trailer. And this is actually kind of funny, because when it comes to teaser trailers, yeah, you can just take clips of your game, but I just have this like vision that I'm trying to aim and go for. And in order to do that, I have to create some maps and invent some stuff specific for the teaser trailer. Like, here's a screenshot from it. And this screenshot is nowhere in the game. It's exclusive for this trailer and for the trailer only. But it pretty much describes the game very, very accurately. Like, I see it commonly done for film, but it's kind of just funny to do it for a small indie game. But good news, that trailer is pretty much complete. I'm just going through the final edits of it, and once that's done, it will launch alongside with the game page. And of course, I will throw it up on the YouTube channel. And of course, if it is already up, then you can check it out right now. The text that popped up will tell you if it did or not. And that practically caps off my April for Captive. I am currently working on music, and it's weird, and I'm probably jinxing myself, but things are actually coming a lot easier for this project than it did with Caster's Trap. Like, if you've seen those devlogs and followed me throughout that process, you know that I struggled so hard when it came to making the music. But for this one, I'm actually doing a lot better. I don't know what happened. It like just all clicked all of a sudden. Like I think then I'm also able to navigate through Bitwig a little bit easier. Like, I'm starting to understand the different categories of instrument and how it helps supports a piece of music. So yeah, I think it's going by a lot faster and a lot smoother. Although I will say that with Captive, it is more atmospheric and more ambiance than it is epic or melodies that came with Caster's Trap. So there is that difference there, and that could be the main reason why. But I do want to think that something did click, and I am developing through music. Yeah, creating music, I don't actually know the term for it. Scripting music, I'm going through that process a little bit easier, and I'm proud to say that. Actually, you know what I think it is? I think I'm just more confident in my piece than it is anything else. Like, I still wouldn't say that what I create is, it's more like, but I'm more comfortable with what I create now, so yeah. So currently what I've got going on now and what I see myself doing throughout the month of May is going through the game from start to end, polishing it up, fixing as much grammar issue as I can spot, and then of course just linking different transitions from intro to night 1 to dinner 1 to day 2 and all those sort of things, but also replacing a lot of the old sound effects, because currently I just had a lot of the RTP as placeholder and I'm recreating a lot of it. I'm also doing the process for sound effects a little bit different than I did with Caster's Trap. I think with Caster's Trap I kind of catered for Caster's Trap only, but now I'm trying to create sound effects with more of a generic, not necessarily more generic sound, but for generic sound effects like doorknobs and that sort of thing. I'm taking it, I'm storing it into a database so that for when I work on a future project, everything will start coming together a lot more faster and a lot more smoother. Alright, and that's pretty much it. That's all I got going on for Captive. YAMI! You are my idol, by the way, in case you were wondering. And with that said, let's move on to the next topic. MDR Monthly Developer Review. Sup dogs, and welcome to MDR, the series where I recap everything that I've done in my latest project, Captive YAMI, as well as any other types of shenanigans I've been up to for the month of May. Now as for the month of May, I'm trying to remember what I did. The first thing I actually did was create a plugin, which is kind of nuts because it's the first plugin I ever made, and as you can imagine, oh boy, did that take me a long while just to do a very simple thing. All I wanted to do was hide my mouse and change the mouse image cursor. I like to actually give credit to Aunt Mouse Lab. She actually helped me out through her YouTube videos, and still took me the entire day to figure it out, but hey, I at least had somewhere to start. Overall, I gotta say, it was awful. Just because you have your plugin manager commands, and then you have your plugin commands inside events, so you gotta like think about those two things and script out for those two things, and then there's the actual doing what you wanted to do, so it's like kind of weird. But besides that, for the most part, all I really did was link the maps together. So usually when I'm like testing out and debugging, I usually have my player start on the map, and then there's a small event that will turn on all of the switches and variables and set all of that so that I can just jump straight into what I need to test. And of course I am also using labels to jump through my scripts, so I can just skip through all the cutscene and get straight into what I need to go into. So all I was really doing was just cleaning that up, removing all those old jump to labels, removing those test events, and making sure that the transfer between one map to the next actually looked good. And I also cleaned up a few graphics and added a few graphics and a couple of sound effects. Most in particular, I had to rework a lot of the times when Aelin starts in the basement, just because there's a very interesting thing that happens with MZ3D, the plugin, and it's probably because I just don't know it as well. But based on the player's facing direction, when you tell it to transform into that 2D perspective, whatever your facing direction is considered the way that it flips. So if the player is facing down, then the map will actually look upside down. And then if players look facing up, then it'll actually display the right way up. It was actually pretty weird. It took me a while to figure that out, but figured it out, and I had to make sure that I had the player facing the correct direction before I started transforming the map. Other than that, there's another thing I couldn't figure out, and it was with the player shadow. For whatever reason, I just could not figure out how to turn off the shadow. When Aelin was laying on the bed, you'll see her laying on the bed, but then her shadow would be like beneath the bed, and it would be really weird. So instead of figuring out how to fix this, I did more so a loop around this, and all I made was player transparent so that the shadow is also transparent, and I just had a dummy event in place of where the player would be going through all those motions. And of course I just turn off the shadows altogether. Now the tricky thing by doing this is that the camera has to center and follow the player or follow a certain event. So if the event is moving off the bed and moving around, then you need the camera to follow it. But when you switch the camera from following the dummy event to the player, it flickers and it'll look really weird. So what I actually had to do is once Aelin left the bed, the player was in position, turns on the transparency so that you can see the shadow, and then flip the camera. It's crazy, right? To have to do all of that just to make it look more smoother. But I don't know, I'm reading through Qt Virus's documentation, and I can't find anywhere to turn off the player shadow. And I saw this like tutorial series on YouTube for MZ3D, and I saw how to turn off shadows for events, but it didn't work for players. Maybe I just had the command wrong. I don't know. I just can't turn off the player shadow. So if you happen to know, let me know. Not like it will do anything for me now, but perhaps someone else who's trying to do the same thing, they could probably use it. Another big one I did is, of course, the grammar. I actually rewrote well, I didn't really like rewrite the script. I just rephrased a couple of things to make it feel more natural. And of course, that always takes a good chunk of time. And then fixing a couple of bugs here and there. Actually, you know what's interesting? When you playtest something so much to the point that you just know how it's supposed to work in the back of your head, and then once you're finished with it, you don't go back to it for the longest time, let's say a couple of months. Now, when you're about to finish the project, you go back and play everything to make sure that everything's all smooth and that there's no bugs. Then you reach that point for that mechanic that you made, and then you're like, what the heck was I thinking? Why did I think this was good? So that actually happened to one of the scenes, and I actually had to tweak it a bit and rework it. The last thing that I did was I actually created this pixel art scene where the kidnapper puts his hand on Aelin's shoulder. And in my opinion, I thought that was going to be crazy hard and difficult to do because I am jumping outside of my comfort zone with pixel art where everything's just 24 by 24 pixels and then it expands up to 48 by 48. Instead, I'm actually creating like a little portrait. I'm actually drawing the hand, adding details, a little bit of shadows, as well as Aylin's shoulder and a bit of her hair, I guess. And I don't know. It actually turned out a lot easier than I thought it would. The game is set for 1920 by 1080, but the way I did it, I think I did 192 by 108, and then I just scaled it up to 1920 by 1080. Something like that. Not exactly that, but basically that. No. It's kind of like a proud moment, I suppose. Like, I'm just remembering back to the Cashier's Trap days where I'm like struggling just to make a lantern. And here I am, making a little baby portrait. That's progress. 2 more things I made. BGMs. They are a bit more easier to create in this game just because it is a little bit more ambient than it is making melodies. And there's no like real intense music I have to create. I find that creating lower BPM songs is a lot easier than creating higher BPM songs. So yeah, another proud moment for me. Alright, and that's Captive YAMI. I was hoping to have the game released in July, but if I'm gonna be realistic, if there's one thing I've learned, is that you're certain you're gonna be able to finish your game by a certain month, add 2 months to it. And that's really when it might actually get released. So I wanted July. Realistically, it'll probably be August or September. But I really feel like it's August right now. Plus 2 months. On to the next topic. What up, dogs, and welcome to Monthly Developer Review. Sup, dogs, and welcome to MDR, the series where I talk about all the latest things I've done in my latest project, Captive YAMI, as well as all the other shenanigans I've done for the month of June. I think I should start off by saying, happy summer. Alright, now let's move on. So for this month, I would say about a solid 70% of my time was spent creating this, the timeline. There is a wee bit of a story behind this, and the whole idea of a timeline was actually inspired by one of my favorite games, AI Somnium Files. See? See? A man named Kotaro Uchikoshi is one of the designers for AI Somnium Files, and before that he worked on a series called Zero Escape 999, and this one is the second game in the trilogy, and it happens to be my favorite of the 3. But anyway, these games are heavily based on a timeline, and it's done rather uniquely, where each timeline tends to split at different points in the game, and rather than just splitting towards the end where it's like good ending, bad ending, very good ending, very bad ending, true ending, it actually helps build the story. So as you play through one path, it tells you a little bit more about the characters, about the story, and somehow, magically, it all connects. And for the most part, that tends to be what I inspire towards with my horror games. If you played Cashier's Trap, which is my previous project, then you'll know how one ending can be somewhat significantly different than another ending. And that's pretty much what I'm striving to do with Captive You Are My Idol. Especially since you have these 2 splits where you could be very observant or you could be very deceitful. And then of course there's that third option of just succumbing to his desires. I wouldn't say that this timeline was something I planned for very early on. Neither was it something I kind of just spurred up in the last month, but it's something I've been thinking about in the back of my mind as I've developed this game. Kind of just thinking about, hey, for replayability, it would be pretty good if I had a timeline. This way, rather than figuring out which game save is what, they could just jump into where they want to go, and it also helps track all their different endings and how many that they've collected and how many more there are to go. At first, I thought the puzzle queue was the most exciting thing I made with this game, but nope, it's actually the timeline. The timeline is just so much fun. Surprisingly enough, it wasn't that complicated for me to make. I think it's because I've created a lot of picture-based puzzle, and as you can imagine, the timeline is also picture-based. But I would say that is extremely tedious, where you have to figure out what each of the timeline selectable slots, I don't know what to call them, events, let's call them events, what each of the events will do, and then you also have to control the player navigator cursor, as well as doing any sort of effects, like you see the scrolling images. So it's very tedious, but I think it pays off, and I'm really hoping that this helps. For lack of a better word, let's just go with convince the player to jump into a different path and try something else and try to collect all the endings. If a timeline is something you guys are interested in seeing like a tutorial about, then I think maybe 1 or 2 months after the release of Captive YAMI, I'll put out a guide, and I think it'll be very helpful for any first time timeline makers. But anyway, I wouldn't say that creating this timeline came without difficulties. It certainly did. First of all, the design. I spent about 2 days just trying to figure out what it would look like, and I even came up with like the most lamest looking draft that could ever be seen. Yeah, it's kind of disappointing to look at. It's like, you spent 2 days on this? Yes, I did. But anyway, it was more so trying to figure out the orientation, if I wanted to go from left to right or top to down, how I want to categorize it per day, or so on and so forth. Eventually I came up with what you guys see in front of you, and I wanted to keep it onto one screen, just because this game is meant to be relatively short. Gameplay is meant to be about 40 minutes from day 1 to one of the endings in day 4, but if you do decide to collect them all, then it can span up to 3 to 4 hours. The next most difficult thing was trying to figure out how to enter the timeline. At first, I wanted the player to be able to enter it through their main menu whenever they wanted to, but the difficulty with that was figuring out how to pause the game, because the only way I knew how to do things is with common events. And if you do things with common events, it means that stuff in the background will continue to run. So that's not good. That eventually pointed me towards making a plugin, and these menu options are better known as scenes in JavaScript, or at least in the RPG Maker universe. And creating those scenes are a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be. Pretty much, I didn't want to dedicate the days of learning a creation of a scene. Probably will in the future, but as of right now, I didn't want to do that, so ultimately I decided to teleport the player to a brand new map and create all of the engine through common events. But yeah, that's the timeline in a nutshell. Other than that, I created a secret ending. Although telling you guys now isn't exactly a secret ending, but it's a secret ending because it won't appear on the timeline. It's more so for those who are a little bit more curious and who really loves to go for those 100% Steam achievements. So, all for you guys. That was the most ugliest sound I ever made. Anyway, that's pretty much my June in a nutshell. I'm still testing out all the bugs, going from one scene to the next. Oh, by the way, making that timeline actually made my testing so much more easier, because rather than having to dedicate a save for different locations, I could just jump into the timeline. It's great. Alright, enough of the timeline talk. I finally took a step back to realize all the things I have left to do with Captive, and there's the title art, what I want to do with my saves. Like if you play Capture's Trap, you'll notice that there are splash arts depending on where in the game that you are. I don't think I'll make a splash art for each of the different moments in Captive like I did with Cash's Trap, but I think what I'll do instead is one where you have completed the game and enabled the timeline versus not reaching one of the endings yet. And then there's, of course, making all of the different BGMs for everything. Yeah, so a good bit of work to do, but I can proudly say that 90% of the testing has been completed. So in the last MDR, at the very end, I mentioned that I was creating a video for Captive, and unfortunately I was not able to finish that. This timeline, it just ate up so much more time than I thought it would. So anyway, I decided that it will come out in July, hopefully. And rather than holding your suspense any longer, I'll talk about it a little bit more. There's going to be 3 main videos for this Captive series. The first one, which honestly should have been released back in like January or February, which is the video I'm talking about or been talking about. And this is supposed to be like a proposal type of video where I showcase the idea of Captive, You Are My Idol, and what my hopes are and my expectations are with this game. It's supposed to be relatively short, 10 minutes or less, and it's supposed to gauge your interest. Before, I wasn't planning MDR, like back in January. It kind of just spawned after the video I made for the month of January, and that's kind of what pushed that video off. But the second video, which will be titled Making Horror, maybe, not exactly sure, or Project Horror, something like that. Anyway, it'll be the main video, and it will run very similarly to RPG Maker AI, as well as the Phasmophobia video I made way back when. So, hope you guys are excited for that one, because that one will be very intense when it comes to the creation. The third of which is kind of like the aftermath, where it's more so for any developers. So if you guys are developers watching this video, then you'll probably find it the most interesting one, where I kind of talk about all the good, the bad, when it came with RPG Maker 3D, MZ3D. So yeah, that's pretty much that series in a nutshell. Can you imagine I'm making this game just for the series? The series is not for the game is for the series. But it's all fun, and I enjoy this very much. And that pretty much concludes all the things I've been doing for our Captive YAMI. And so, on to the next topic. Sup dogs, and welcome to, and get this, the second to last episode of Monthly Developer Review. Yes, you heard that right. The second to last episode of MDR is crazy. I realized it like a week ago, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this is it. This is the second to last episode of MDR. I'm ready to say goodbye. I gotta create a whole speech. But nah, we gotta save that for the next episode. The next and final episode. Kind of crazy to think about, but Captive, it's done. It needs one more final playthrough test, just for my own sanity check, but it's done. Like, if I really want, it could even go up in August. But there are a couple of things I need to organize with the trailers, a couple of videos, and other things I'll talk about in this video. So, we'll save it for September. It's kind of ironic that Cash's Trap released in September, and Captives is gonna follow suit. Anyway, as per custom with the completion of any game I make, get that tub of ice cream ready, because that's how we're gonna enjoy the final episode. Now, with Captive YAMI. Now, before I jump into all the things I've done, have you guys seen the first episode of Making Horror? What you guys think? It's a short and sweet 6-ish minutes, and it's more so just to get the concept of Captive out there. For those of you who isn't interested in any of the MDRs, although if you are watching this MDR, then it makes no sense for me to tell you that. Anyway, I decided to try a new formula with that one. This first episode of Making Horror was supposed to come before I started really working or doing a lot of work into Captive. But then MDR became a series and I just kept going and going and going. But the B-roll stuff, that's new. I'll admit that it did feel a little bit awkward seeing it for the first time, but I think there is some potential there, especially with the concept videos, just because I won't have a lot of those assets in the future. Unless I do just keep doing MDRs. Welcome to a life in TheOdie. Basically, if you haven't checked it out yet, then please do. The next episode of Making Horror, which is the main video of Making Horror, will be the massive one. The main of the series. The one you gotta watch. And then the third and last episode will just be the aftermath, and more so for the developers who wants to hear my full review after using MZ3D. Now to the updates. To start with, the title card. Check it out. It's pretty simple, but at the same time, being a pixelated horror game, I think it's okay to be simple at times. I don't really have that art talent, so I gotta do with what I know that I can do. If you remember in the last MDR, I talked about these save images and how I wanted to go about it. Well, turns out I decided to do images depending on what part you are in the game, yet again. I don't know, I just find it so very convenient as the player. I decided to have only 2 save slots, both of which are autosaves. One is for the timeline so that you can constantly go back to it, and then the other of which is if you're not in a timeline and you want to replay a certain section, like if you get murdered and you need to continue off of there as opposed to having to jump back into the timeline and then jumping back into there. So I'm trying to make it as convenient as possible for my players. I decided to just take screenshots of scenes in the game so that the player can be like, oh yeah, I recognize that scene. I know exactly where I am with that save. But for Caster's Trap, I think I do like the personalized pixel art images that describes the scene, just because with Captive you do have timelines and you're jumping all over the place, but with Caster's Trap it's more so remembering which part of the game that you are in, or which part of the game that save is particularly in. Not to mention with Casters you get a bunch of saves, but with Captive it's all autosave and it's like 1 or 2 of them. Doing the save images actually didn't take me too much time. It was mostly finding the right scenes to really describe the moment in time that you were in. But after that, I then worked on, and this is going to surprise you the most, but I worked on the BGMs and managed to complete them all in the single month of July. That is wild. If any of you guys came from the Caster's Trap days, then you'll know how horrible I am with music, and that for 1 month, it will probably get me 10 seconds of a song. But somehow, I managed to get them all for Captive in the month of July, and that was just mind-blowing to me. I think it does go back to this game being a little bit more atmospheric, less having to try and figure out the melodies, and just more so finding the right tone for the moment. So, yeah. Let's see, how many BGMs did I make this time? There is a total of 11 BGMs, and I will admit I did cheat a little bit, where I kind of took the same rhythm from one song and just put it into another song. So I will admit I did cheat a little bit there, but I think with this game you'll notice it less when you play through it, as opposed to just letting it play one song after another like an album. So yeah. So yeah, doesn't sound like a lot of updates. Actually, one major update I did was the achievements. I finally got it all into Steam, got the achievements up there, and it works. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to be interested, especially if you're new to RPG Maker, as to how I got the achievements up there, and I will make a video. But it won't come out for another 2 to 3 months, just because I do want to complete and finish captive, and then I'll do the achievement stuff. But for those of you who are eager and wants to get ahead of the curve or ahead of the group, Neko Gakuen, this person is my hero for implementing the achievements. They got a very simple website, just follow the steps. Although I will warn you that their script is 9, maybe 10 months old now, and no matter how much I tried, I could not get it to work with the latest version of the SDK. So just do the conversion. Not 10 months ago, look for the SDK version that was 10 months ago, use that one. Alright, so what's there left to do? Well, if Caster's Trap is done and it's up on Steam, how could it possibly release in September instead of August? Well, it actually all has to do with pushing it out there. I gotta make the trailer, I gotta figure out a release date, I gotta do the videos for making a horror to complete that series in preparation of the release of the game, and I just gotta start posting more to Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, maybe some RPG Maker forums. Just get it out there, you know? So there's still a lot to do, and I just want to make sure that it has a good release. That's pretty much it. Alright, and with that, we are done with the development talk and moving on to the rest of my July. Sup dogs, and welcome to the final episode of Monthly Developer Review. Oh, I'm gonna miss saying that. Welcome to MDR, and the last episode to the series where I talk about all the things I've done in my latest project, Captive. You are my idol. As well as everything else I've done for the month of August. And I do hope you brought your ice cream because we will be cheering throughout this episode. Now, that said, if you happen to be new here, then I guess I should tell you guys about Captive. But I should also tell you that you missed 7 episodes previous to this one. So, Captive is complete, and I spent all of August doing a whole ton of things to make sure it gets live, pushing out videos out there, and of course, bug testing it to the very end. I actually have a schedule that I can show you that I've been working on. Ta-da! But, you know, I could also just screenshot it and toss it up there. That'll probably make more sense. I'd say a lot of the work was actually recording footage, making sure that trailer looked good, and if you haven't seen it yet, then do check it out down in the descriptions. Making sure that Steam is happy, it's up on Steam, the achievements all work, and that Steam on their end has reviewed the game and is ready to go live. And similar to Caster's Trap, there will be a DLC for anyone who wants to support me. It comes with an ebook that's about 15 pages long and is filled with like background information about the game, behind the scenes I mean, and just developer's notes, as well as what's planned for the future. And then of course I also started working on the Project Horror videos. There's 2 big videos coming. Project Horror MZ3D, which is the highlight video of the series, and then Aftermath, which is me talking about all the things that I've encountered while using MZ3D. So if you guys are on the fence on whether or not you'll get MZ3D, then maybe worth a watch. But anyway, now that it is August 24th, I think I am at a much more comfortable state of mind. Like at the beginning when I was writing out that calendar, oh man, it was just stress city. I was like, oh my god, will I actually be able to complete all this on time? But as it turns out, I'm actually a little bit ahead on schedule. I managed to finish the edits for Project Horror, and I started working on the Aftermath. But right now, things are chill, things are pretty happy, and you know, Captive, 8 months. 8 months. Wow. When I started working on Captive, I thought it was just going to be like a 3 or 4 month project. But, of course, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to add this puzzle cube. You know what, I'm going to try and do this, and then try and do that. And then it kind of just started snowballing as I classically do things. I can't wait for you guys to watch Project Horror. It's gonna be great. And you know, with that, let's have our first cheers. Don't mind me as I struggle and get this first scoop out. Oh, actually, it kind of melted a little bit. Alright, no, it doesn't look all that good now that's a little bit melted. But this is for the 8 long months of captive. You are my idol. Toast to the project. It's also 9 in the morning when I record these. Can't say my buddy was ready for that. You know, now that I think about it, because I also have a cup of coffee, I really wish I got like chocolate or something. Not that weird. Not that weird. So, it's okay. At least it's not like strawberry. Alright, so with that said, Captive, You Are My Idol will be releasing on September 10th. I will be releasing it at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be $5, but, you know, there's this pretty neat button on Steamworks where you put it all on Steam about having a release sale? You know, I can't actually disclose any figures on whether or not I will do it, but just thought it was a pretty cool thing that can happen. Alright. Now with that said, let's move on to the next topic. Oh yeah, did you guys watch the trailer? What you guys think? Was it a little bit exciting? Like, so much happened this month that I actually forgot that that trailer released in this month. I thought it released last month. That's how crazy it's been for me. I actually gotta like stop and pause and watch it just to remember what I did for it. I feel like trailers are like so hard to make these days just because you have to condense so much in so little time. And with the attention span of like shorts, usually you have to capture them within the first 5 seconds. And if you don't, then they're just gonna brush past it. But at the same time, you do want to be truthful for your trailers. So I'm hoping with that opening scene, the audience will realize that they are playing as like a YouTuber or something like that who gets kidnapped. But then like the first half of the video all takes place in 2D, and it's kind of to wrap the audience mind around the idea that, oh, this is just a 2D game. Okay, whatever. But if they stick around long enough, they'll hit that turning point where it's like, no, it's not. It actually has a mode where things in 3D, but really it's just like first person perspective, but 3D to the RPG Maker engine, and it's a little bit more than what you think it is. Then of course, there's a fast pacing second half where I throw all the clips to show what's gonna happen in this game. It's not just sitting at that table. There's also the puzzle cube, choices, and even that weird moment where the background's like all black and you're a little kid. So yeah, there's a little of depth in here that I was hoping to portray in that trailer, but again, it is a little bit more challenging with the times of today, where if you don't capture them within that first few seconds, then they'll probably just skip it and move on to the next one. Something I've been learning with releasing shorts. And to that point, if you haven't noticed, shorts are releasing every Tuesday now, and it will be releasing at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is to go alongside with the release of the official game so that you kind of get used to this time frame. I'd say if there's anything, just getting the game out there and doing PR and all that stuff is like the hardest thing for me. It used to be art and music, now it's that. So with that, a toast to my very trying attempts. I don't think you want to see my scoops anymore. They're like kind of melty, but it's still a toast to that. And now, on to the next topic. Maybe I should just replace the coffee with the ice cream altogether. And on to the next topic. And that is the closing of MDR. First of all, let's grab ourselves a scoop for the 8 great months of MDR. MDR has been a series that kind of spawned out of my usual hiatus in January, where I come back and talk about how that January went, and then I've decided, you know what? I think I can do this while I work on Captive, as opposed to just hiding in the shadows, sending some community posts, maybe some stuff on Instagram, and instead do monthly developer reviews. And lo and behold, this worked out. And for those of you guys who supported the series, I'm very thankful. As fun as the vlogs were for Caster's Trap, it is more time consuming to do vlogs. Just the idea of keeping up to them, because if you vlog something and you don't release it for like another month or two, then those vlogs kind of like lose the connectivity with the viewers, I feel like. But with these MDRs, we kind of got a good cadence out of it, and I was able to develop more stress-free. And it's also been stress-free to just chat about other things that isn't always game development. So, a scoop for the MDR series. Though now it's more like slurps for me. I'm gonna change ice creams. Here we go. I moved on to ube. And now comes the struggle. This idea was a lot better in my mind than in practice. To the MDR series. And now, I do want to say thank you to all you guys who just supported me and my crazy ideas, Captive. It's always very encouraging to read your comments and to see that you guys are so supportive with the project and the idea of running MZ3D and doing these weird challenges that I put myself up to. So, to all the friends, family, and viewers, thank you. A scoop to that. Ugh. That's a healthy looking scoop. Sort of. Alright you guys, thank you so much for watching MDR. It's been a fun year making these videos, and I do hope that you do give Captive You Are My Idol a try. If you're not interested in purchasing the game whatsoever, then at the very least, do please check out the video when it comes out. I had a lot of fun editing that thing, and I put as much work as I possibly could to polish it and make it feel and sound and watch. Basically, I think it will be a good one. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, later. I'll do it with the ice cream. Also not sponsored. This has now become my breakfast. A little ube coffee. Well, they're both earthy flavors, so it's not the worst. We are now at October 30th, and boy oh boy do I have some stories to tell you guys. First of all, you know how in that last MDR of August, I said that, you know what, life is pretty chill, it's not too bad, things are going smoothly. Well, it did not go smoothly at all. Oh my god, it was quite the nightmare. I got something to show you, and it's not something I'm proud of. I'm proud by the fact that I was able to make this, but I'm not proud by the fact that it had to be made. This is my list of Captive to do. Yeah, it's gross. oh baby, it's gross, and this is the last two to 3 weeks, more like last 2 weeks before it went live. And for the most part, I'd say like 3/4 of it is just questionable grammar decisions I made that I ended up correcting. But the biggest bulk of the work that kind of just threw a meteor right at me was the fact that I updated the plugins. Up until the last 2 weeks, I completely forgot about the game being played in windowed mode versus full screen, and I was like, wait a second, people should be able to play this in full screen. And I was looking for a plugin where that can just be easily enabled in the options. Unfortunately, I could not find a good one. So I decided to take a step back into Visual Stella, be like, okay, let's see what you got here. And as it so happens that the options worked out fine, be incorporated with MZ3D, because if you saw this old video, then I said it in there that they kind of conflict because you don't see that MZ3D options. Well, because of MZ3D having updated as well as Visual Stella, now you can. But this is where things got more complicated, because I also had to update the button common event buttons, and that kind of just destroyed so many things. Pretty much all of the buttons that was previously registered, it didn't work. I forgot how I fixed it because it's been like a month and a half since then, but I also remember that there was something that was permanently destroyed that wouldn't work, and I think it had something to do with MZ3D and the latest version of RPG Maker, because now I'm making Detective Hearts and that also uses MZ3D, and I made it very, very important that I downloaded the core script of RPG Maker that I use for Captive and this one in Detective Hearts to work with the current version of MZ3D. Hopefully by now it's all fixed, but I don't know. It was just a load of monstrosity. Anyway, I wish I recorded my experience better, because right now I can't remember anything now that a month and a half later, but it was just like in mega chaos mode where the only thing I was focused on was making sure it all worked. I play tested the game down to like Inferno, and then I did the updates, and then everything started crashing, so I had to play test it again down to Inferno. Anyway, I'm glad to have that behind me. I know what you guys are more interested in, and it is how has Captive done? And I actually have the website loaded up on my phone. I have not seen the stats since yesterday, and it is exactly the same as yesterday. I'll take a screenshot here. I have sold a total of 41 copies, one of which has been returned, and 8 DLCs has also been purchased. The DLC being the supporter pack for $1, where you get the giant manual for kind of just behind the scenes as well as what's coming for the future. But overall, gross, I have made $134. Net, I have made $120. But it costs $100 to put your game up on Steam, so just subtract out $100. You can get the $100 back, but that's only if you made like $400 in net revenue, which of course I didn't. And then there was also the cost of the MZ3D plugin, and MZ3D costs $25. Now, full disclosure is that during the release, the first 2 weeks, I did have a release sale where I put it down from $5 to $3 a copy. And then I think like 38 38 or 39 of the purchases has been under that sale, and then like 2 or 3 copies were sold at full price of $5. So yeah, at the end I did lose $5, but it's alright. I think if anything, I'm more thankful to have you guys to continue to support me. It really does help me out and allows me to continue to do all of this. I guess if anything, if it shows me something, is that there's still a lot for me to learn and still a lot for me to do. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching, and when Detective Hearts comes out, I hope you enjoy either playing the game or all the videos that comes out for it. If you don't know, Detective Hearts is a sequel to Captive, as well as Murder at the Love Throne 69 Motel. Except it's a non-canon sequel, so whatever goes on in Detective Hearts should not spoil Captive. However, it is strongly recommended that you do play Captive and also play Love Throne so that you kind of know the characters and know exactly what's going on. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching. Till the next one, later.